I hope you don't have too high expectation. I hope that you will not consider this as a comprehensive, introduction to the very, probably the most important Buddhist philosophy of what we call Sipa Korlo, which is basically, I think loosely, if you translate, will of life. We did have a very brief discussion last time, and we will be, I'm hoping that this is more like a really free interaction, so please feel free to ask, argue, which is a very important tradition in India, which we Tibetans cherish and learn, still trying to learn. But before we do that, before we get into interaction, I'd like to briefly just go over this the sort of the Buddhist definition of life. Every time we talk about life, Buddhists tend to use the word, the will, korlo, sort of sipa korlo. Also, kor has this connotation of will going round and round, which is actually kind of important. I know this jargon's a little academic and intellectual, but I think for this context, kind of important. As this iconography, which is actually very important. In the past, I was told that, in fact, this icon is probably more important than statues or the images of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. As this symbolic representation of life, so-called life, indicates life. For Buddhists, life is something that goes round and round, cyclic existence. I will have to bore you with some term first before we get into discussion, because I think definition, terminology, connotations kind of important. Otherwise, many times we sort of miss the point, and we have to come to some sort of a mutual agreement what we mean by life also. Okay, the Tibetan word sipa is really, it's quite a rich term. I think it derived from the Sanskrit word bhava. It refers to things like possible, which is a very interesting, because am I living? Are you living? Do you have life? Is this life? So-called life. It may be just a possible existence. It's only a possibility. It's a really interesting approach. And also, the word sipa, life, refers to becoming. So so-called life that we have is a continuation of becoming. Becoming. We will go through that later on, but let me just quickly go through all the terms. Also, the word sipa, which is translated as life for today, is something temporal. So life is always, it has the big connotation of something temporary, nothing permanent. It's always fading, it's always moving, it's always transforming, it's always metamorphosis. How should I call it? It's always like taking a different shape all the time. And then in the general sense, the word sipa also refers to the sphere, whether it's a physical sphere or whether it's a mental sphere, it doesn't matter. Some sort of a sphere, a base. Then more easy connotations are living beings. Even though we, most of the times the so-called living being, the term living beings, kind of vague because we really don't know what do we mean by living. And then exclusively, I don't know whether I should say exclusively, in the Tantric Buddhism, the word sipa, or the life, also refers to the state of sort of intermediate, something in between. For instance, right now, this very moment, I'm guessing that we are alive, and this very moment is all we have. And even as I speak, this very moment is past. So we are always living in between what is past a moment before and what is going to come a moment later. And this very moment is all we have. And this is the most precious. This is the most important. And what you do and how you handle this moment really is all that matters, so to speak. If I speak it very it's a very big generalization, but I think it's easier to understand this way. So, all these connotations that I've been presenting is all together, we also use the word samsara. The word samsara. So this, I hope, I have managed to sort of give you at least a vague idea of what do I mean by life before we talk about the will of life. Okay. Obviously, Buddhism is a path. It is a means. It is not the end. It is not the aim. It is just a means. It's like of course, means are important, but more important is the result, the end. So, when we talk about path as a technique, as a means, I'm sure many of you know the Buddhists love talking about mindfulness. Buddhists love talking about awareness. So when we talk about mindfulness, what are we what are we mindful of? And this is a really important subject, and this is where the whole Buddhist technique of meditation, discipline, even like ethic, morality, everything generates from this, based on this so-called mindfulness. Okay, now it looks like all religion seems to talk about some sort of a negative force. If I put it very crudely, all religion seems to talk about sort of the ultimate enemy, the Satan, the devil, the evil force. If you were to ask, does Buddhism have this kind equivalent of Satan? What is Buddhist concept of Satan, evil force? Buddhists don't believe in an evil force that exists externally. Now, if you insist in having one, then Buddhists would say it is the distraction. Distraction is the force, the evil force. And when we talk about the distractions, we are not talking about big distractions such as web browsing or, social media or, we are not talking about that. We are, of course, that too. That comes, when we talk about that kind of distractions, we are already talking about a very gross level of distractions. We are talking about a very, very subtle distractions. For instance, even now, as we talk, you must be thinking something. You must be listening to me, at least. Do you know that you are listening to me? Probably not. Probably you can only remember that you are listening to something. You are sitting here. Until I mention that you have been sitting here, have you been aware that you are sitting here? Probably not. If I ask you, what's your name? Most probably you will give a very accurate answer. My name is this and that. But as you speak, are you aware that you are saying what you are saying? Everything. Are you aware of the humming of air condition? Are you aware of the birds chirping? Constantly, we are not aware of what is happening in your sphere of consciousness. We can remember. We can, we can throw our projection to the future. We can even imagine what we will cook tomorrow. But that you are doing now. We can think about what happened last year, but you are doing it right now, this very moment. And while you do it, you are not aware of what you are doing it as you are doing it. And this actually affects lots of things. For instance, even if you are having a cup of tea, you are not really thinking about the tea. And most probably you are planning, you are already thinking about what had happened in the past, you are thinking about the future. Now this constant distractions or continuous unconsciously living, basically, is what Buddhists call ignorance, avidya. So, constantly not living consciously is one of the agents that goes round and round. Remember, I was going to talk about what is it that is going round and round. Okay, if I summarize, since this is kind of a very philosophical and kind of a difficult subject, I have to sort of repeat this So you'll have to excuse me if I keep on repeating this. Like Sipa Kolo, samsara, cyclic existence. What is going round and round and round? There has to be something that goes round. So one of the agent that goes round and round is this unconsciously living, not knowing while it is happening. It's not as if you are dead, or it's not as if you have suddenly become a stone or a piece of wood. You are perfectly alive, you have a mind, you are cognizing, you are imagining, you are daydreaming, you are tasting, you are planning, you are recalling, but as you do it, you are not aware of this. And this is the central agent that goes round. Then, this continuous unawareness, this continuous no cognition, this continuous no, mindful. What does this lead to? This then leads us, okay, so you think of something and you are not aware of it. This gives birth to nama, names, rupa, form. This gives birth to projection, basically. Then you create ideas. I think everybody has this Wheel of Life picture, but probably no need to really refer. But just in case you want to, they in the outermost ring, there's the 12 different representation of what we call nidanas, and the first one actually is represented with a picture of a person who's blind, basically, which represents ignorance. And then the second picture, painting, many times the second painting has the potter making pots, and this is to represent the projection. So anyway, out of not knowing, constant not knowing creates the projection, which then gives birth to form, a lot of things, names, and then craving. Of course, before the craving, values. Thing you project, and then you give value, some as desirable, others as not desirable. And once you have this desirable and non-desirable, then that also leads to hope and fear. Hope to have desirable things, and fear of bumping into unfavorable circumstance and the situation. So then, as you have hope and fear, then this gives birth to all kinds of emotions such as aggression, desire, jealousy, pride, doubt, so on and so forth. And then, of course, craving, and then leads to, by then there's already the action of trying to acquire what you think is good and what do you think is beautiful, what do you think is desirable, and trying to escape or avoid or stop or defend yourself from things that are not good, which is action. once you have projection and action, it then leads us to the result, reaction, effect of that. And that's where things does not stop. Once you have the reaction or the effect, you then have a more reference. And the more reference you have, more hope and fear and more emotions. And so these are the subsequent, agents. So there's a ignorance, and then there's, projection, then there's craving, hope, fear, reaction, a result, which leads to more ignorance, more action. So this is what goes on, and this is called cyclic existence. And as long as you are bound by this cyclic existence, you are not free. You are bound. So this is basically the Buddhist definition of life or will of life. Now, before I'm thinking of actually taking advantage of such a beautiful setting and apply these theory into practice by actually maybe sitting and actually experiencing how the constant ignorance appears and constant distraction actually how much distractions we have by probably maybe sitting for a few minutes. But before we do that, since it's an interreaction, I like you to actually maybe ask questions, and then I'm happy to answer. You can also ask questions regarding the iconography also directly. Do they have a... So people will use the mic? Okay. So if anyone, yeah?
Rinpoche, one of the explanations, the word sipa, you said it is in between, the moment in between, that means the past and the future. So whatever the moment is there, living in that moment without distraction, you said is the Buddhist way of looking at the life.
That is what you are. That is a technique that you have to apply. And by doing so, what will happen is you will not be carried away by the past and the future. By not being carried away by past and the future means you have less hope and fear. Less hope and fear means less, defilement, less emotions, less judgment. So you are totally living in the present. Now, this is also, one should not be thinking that you will then reach to some sort of a vegetable state or some sort of go through some sort of a coma. It's not like that at all. As Shantideva said in one of the most important texts, that when you totally of course totally, even if you are free from the past and the future, if you are free from the hope and fear, to the certain, a little bit, the way you look at the life is like how a mother would look at her children playing in the sand and building a sand castle. You will look at them and you might even engage and get along with the children, play with them. But deep inside, you also know this is not really the castle. This is a sand castle. So you have this sort of a compassion and also the awareness, compassion to play along with the children, but also the wisdom and the guts to sort of say, okay, time to pack up, go home.
Rinpoche, could you explain the difference between the second compositional actions and existence? Because they are both types of karma. And I've heard this before and I find it very hard to grasp.
The second...
the compositional actions, the second link
after
ignorance, and then existence comes number 10, I think.
I think one of the problem is when we talk about this 12 interdependent co-origination, somehow we think it comes one after another as if there is a time. But often, most of the time, it is not like that. The speed is so fast. The cyclic existence is so fast. In fact, one of the Buddhist analogies is like fire, a ring of fire. When you move the fire so fast, and when you circle it around so fast, the illusion it gives is there is actually a ring of fire, even though there is no ring of fire. So, first I want to tell you this. So, this first avidya, second avidya, there is no really a big gap in between that. But having said that, this is very technical, by the way, for those who are kind of new into this. It may confuse you a little bit. It's a bit like this, okay. And this is an example that I use often. For instance, and this is quite a useful example, I think. Every time when we are talking about something, like, okay, the hand. When I talk about my hand, like shaking hand with somebody, okay, the moment we think about hand, we think in terms of whole unit, which is not really true. There is no such thing as a hand. There's a skin, there's a bones, there's a vein, there's a blood, there's all that component. But we don't think like that. We think in one unit. That's already the first one, the ignorance. And then also, when we talk about our hand, we never think that the hand that we are talking about is gone. Now there's a new hand, so to speak. Like yesterday's hand and today's hand is a different hand. Has to be. Even this morning's hand and this very moment's hand is because of the law of impermanence. But we don't think like that. We think, oh, this is the same hand that I've been having for like 5 decades. So on and so forth. There's so many misinterpretation and assumption. Now, you may ask, what's wrong with that? Well, generally, really nothing much is wrong. But if you really think deep, fundamentally it is wrong, because when you have that misunderstanding, then you will have a different kind of expectation. This is why one day, after 56 years later, when you look at your hand and when you see more wrinkles, you will think it's unfair. But actually, it's not really unfair. This is, your baby hand is gone. But this is how we think in terms of everything, about our idea, about our, just everything. All values we think in one unit as a permanent and also as independent. And this is the first ignorance we are talking about. Okay? The second composition, you are talking about the potter's thing. After that, then we interact to the world as if, when I say, please, can I shake your hand? I will never say, can I rub your skin and your sweat and your blood? I want to have the experience of that. We don't think like that. So then, you could get into a big problem shaking hands with the wrong people, not shaking with the right person. That could really, destroy your family relationship, national relationship, so on and so forth. This happens a lot. So it could really, get into international war. Even something so ridiculous like this. So we are being very meticulous here.
Rinpoche, when you are talking about mindfulness, we often try to disconnect from past and future, and we try to remain in present, or we try to focus more like in the present moment. But at that point of time, how do we justify that action? Because that action could be, probably I might be doing something which is maybe harmful, but I might not be knowing at that point of time. But then I might apply the mindfulness, the concept as such. I don't care about my past, and I'm not thinking about my future, and what action currently I'm doing is justified for me. So how do we differentiate those actions?
Okay, so I want to clarify the question a little bit. What you are saying is, okay, you are doing something, probably something not so nice, but you are totally in the present.
Yes.
How do you define that?
Yeah.
How do you distinguish this?
Exactly.
Is it a bad?
Yeah.
Is it still a bad? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this is quite a very big and very important question. I will answer you from the top first, okay? From the most, sophisticated level. This is what a meditation master who has a lot of guts, depends on meditation masters, who has lots of guts and lot of courage and skillful. This is how he or she would say. Let's say you do an hour of philanthropic love and compassion, amazing, great, good things. But you are never in the present. Okay? 1 hour. Then you, maybe you, then next time you throw tantrum, you are really, rude, harsh words, probably even much worse than that. But for one moment, you actually are in the present. This courageous meditation master would say, actually, the second one, he will give you medal for that second one, if there is a medal. You understand? And there's a very good reason. Why? Because when you are so-called philanthropic, loving kindness actions are not accompanied with mindfulness, it could lead to all kinds of things. It could, plant the seed of self-righteousness, puritanical, all kinds of things. But when you have such a strong negative action, but if you are really in the present, and when we talk about in the present, when we are totally in the present, you are not feeding the emotion. So it's a bit like this, a train of negative thoughts and action. The moment you have the present, moment you are in the present, somehow the chain of this train is unhooked. So the speed and the force of this negative train got to be disturbed at least a little bit. And if you do it more, this train will derail. So, from a very highest level, I would say, you should, this is something that you should be investing on. But, of course, not everybody can do that. So, this is why, even in Buddhism, there are many other techniques. In Buddhist sutras, Shastras, there's even technique, there's even prescriptions of how to wash your hand. Like you should wash this way, that way, how to walk, how to look at people, all that kind of, methods and discipline, which unfortunately ends up becoming a ritual. And once a technique becomes a ritual, and once a technique becomes a culture, then that Buddhist culture, Buddhist technique has lost its meaning. So this is why I know that meditation has become kind of a trendy thing to do these days. But many times we don't know how much of these meditators are really wanting to be in the present, or they want to just sort of recharge their greed, their planning, their viciousness. So we don't know. Okay. The mic. Oh, yes. Can you hold on?
Rinpoche, my question is a very basic question. You used, when you were explaining life, you used two words, bhava, and you used samsara. So is there, can they be used like one in place of the other, or both of them have their own specific meaning in explaining?
The word possibility, in the Tibetan word si, is used quite in many different ways. One is, as I was saying, the possibility. This has a really very subtle, connotation, and I think personally, it's quite an important word, because what it really is indicating is that, probably you are not there. You just think you are there. We all have life. We think we are alive. I think I'm here, but are you sure? Who thinks that you are here? So that's an important aspect of the word existence. Look, this is this subject is quite difficult and quite a big one. We actually, before we even talk about this, you and I should come to a conclusion. What do we mean by the word existence? What is existence in Hindi?
Astitva.
Can you use that word?
Astitva.
What does that mean?
It comes from the bhu bhava. Bhava is to come into being.
Into being, okay. Yes, and then the second connotation of becoming or into being is again very important, because, suddenly I'm thinking about a grape. For no reason I'm thinking about a grape. Now, the grape has taken life in my mind. You understand? It has, the becoming of the grape. Now I would think, okay, grape, the dry ones, fresh ones, and then it leads to grape wine. You understand? Then it leads, one becoming leads to many, many other becoming. And if you stop there, that's fine. But it usually doesn't stop, because usually, as I said earlier, you have projections, you have hope and fear, you have value. And once you have the value that you place, then yes, then a lot of other emotions arise, and then you fight, you suffer, and then of course, when we suffer, we try to react to that suffering, and usually we apply some sort of a method of escape or remedy, and then we get addicted to that remedy. We become a slave to that solution, and many times, yes, problem is not a nice thing to have, but a solution is also not so nice thing to have. Ideally, you should never have solutions.
I wanted to ask one thing.
Yes, please.
You said distraction is a form of evilness. Actually, what's wrong with distraction? Sometimes we all get distraction, and that leads to something beautiful also.
Okay. Well, when you are distracted, yeah, very good. When you are distracted, probably the word distract is not really the right translation of the word, Tibetan word yang. Tibetans, they use the word yang, which is quite again, I don't know where that word came from. It has to be translation from a Sanskrit, very, really powerful word. Anyway, when you are so-called yang, basically you are not there. That's quite bad, don't you think? If you are not there, that's not so good. But I know what you mean. I mean, when the reason why we take Panadol is so that you are not there with the pain for 4 hours. So then you have to take it again. That's why we drink, that's why we socialize, that's why we throw parties, that's why we do shopping, all kinds of, addiction we apply so that we will be distracted. And of course, the consumer society loves it, because if everybody becomes such a good meditator and they do not get distracted, the market will collapse. The business will collapse. But I don't think we'll have to worry too much about that. We long to be distracted. And yes, as I can understand, many times, we love to be distracted, and distractions are kind of nice, it's very blissful, but it then leads us to more distractions, and then you get entangled. Yeah, that's the word, entanglement. Distractions gives birth to entanglement. So that's why I was saying, then you try to get out of that, applying another method. Okay?
So knowing about the distraction would be able to manage the distraction.
Yes, interesting. So this is what we are going to do maybe after the break. Knowing that you are distracted is a really bad news for distraction. Already the distractions are not so happy. You understand? But we are talking about it in a very, very subtle level. Very subtle level. Okay, don't you want to have a full life? Don't you? Or you want to have a mediocre, half, unconscious life? I think everybody would like to have a full life in full measure, so to speak. So the Buddhists would argue, saying that if you have distraction, constant distractions, you are not having the full 100% life. You are thinking about something else. You are thinking, you are in the past or you are in the future.
Rinpoche, so from the word bhava and sip, is it in the Tibetan? So we are always becoming, never being there.
Mm-hmm.
Unless we're distracted, is that what you're saying?
We are,
Unless we're non-distracted, sorry. So life
What was
is
that?
always becoming.
yes, we
We are
are always
being.
becoming. That's fine. There's no problem with that. But we are not knowing while it is becoming.
Okay.
You understand? Like for instance, when you are asking questions, I'm sure you are more entangled with your questions than being aware that you are now asking these questions. And me too. I'm so caught up with trying to listen to you and I have to put I better give you a good answer, otherwise Suresh will never talk to me. Stuff like that. It's so much entanglement, so much hope and fear. Okay?
So I think it's a continuation of maybe what you said. How do you distinguish between the becoming and the past?
Becoming in the past?
Yeah. Because by the time you know that it's becoming, it's already the past, isn't it?
Okay. For some reason, this morning, most of your questions are very philosophical. Yeah, which is good, of course. But, it just proves that I'm with Indian. Very good. Actually, there is no such thing as a past and the future apart from the present. But there is an illusion of the past and the illusion of the future which we unnecessarily get entangled with. Which is ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. Past is gone. Future hasn't materialized yet. Yet, we plan about the future, we brood about the past, we get so influenced by this illusory past and the illusory future. And actually, for that matter, strictly speaking, from the Buddhist point of view, even the present is a labeling. But for the sake of our conversation, there is some sort of a cognition or awareness, don't we? I'm talking and you are sort of hearing, and you are talking and I'm hearing it. I'm not like a piece of stone, you are not a piece of wood. There is some sort of a, interreaction. There is a cognition, there is an awareness. See? We are hearing, we are experiencing, we are feeling.
Rinpoche, you defined ignorance as constantly not living consciously or mindfully.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm a little confused. Mindfully means, for example, you have to be mindful of your present moment, you said. But you said when you are mindful of your present moment and you are not distracted, you are not there actually. So when you are not distracted, even then you are not there in the present moment. So why distractions can't lead us to the same goal as being mindful of the present moment can take us to?
I didn't really get your question.
Rinpoche, you said when you are mindful of the present moment, so actually you are not distracted. So when you are not distracted, in a way you are saying you are not there. When you actually sophisticatedly know this, being mindful of being in the present moment. So you are not there. That's why you are in a somewhere.
Relatively speaking, you are there. Only on the relative level, of course.
So even when you are distracted, and relatively if I'm there, for example, the two questions comes to my mind. For example, if I become mindful of that I'm in pain, mindful of I'm in pain in present, how does it help me to get rid of my pain? If the answer is that you won't be there.
Oh, no.
Then when you are distracted to past and future, even then you are not there in the present. Right. How does that doesn't help?
You will probably, especially in the beginning, you will still go through the pain, all of that. And of that, I must also stress, mindfulness practitioners should still take Panadol if you have pain. Still do all the things you do when you are in pain. Whatever you need. Web browsing, meeting a psychologist. I don't know, all of that you can do. But the suggestion is, if you are mindful, if you are aware of this very present moment, chances of you not getting entangled, not only chances, actually it's for sure, you not getting entangled with the hope and fear, all the unnecessary hope and fear is much lesser. And the less you get entangled with the hope and fear, less you get entangled with the past and the future, you are more sober, you are more sane. Sober, sane, always gives you the chance to do the right thing, right decision. Less fear, less hope.
So, Rinpoche, I'm still confused. When you are aware of, when you are mindful of your present, how that helps you to not to have hope and fear? Because if you are in present, I agree that you won't have hope of the future and fear of the past. But present, if you say even relatively you have pain and you become more and more mindful of your present, that too can entangle you.
Oh yes, in the beginning, yes. But
if in the end it helps you, what happens at the end that it helps you suddenly? What should you be mindful of at the end?
I've already told you, most of the pain, actually I would say 99.99 pain derives from hope and fear. So when you are in the present, I told you, your hope and fear, you will not entangle yourself with the hope and fear. So that's already taken care of. I think it's like this. Let me try to give you an example. Actually, after the break, maybe we will actually sit and try to experience what we have been talking. Probably then, after that, you can ask again if you still have the question. But it's not like it's like tackling an illusion. Okay? You are thirsty, let's say, and you are in the desert, and you really want water, and then you are looking at a mirage, and you think it's water first time. But then, that's not water. That's just my illusion. That's just a mirage. You are already liberated from all the delusion of really thinking that illusion as real. And what will that do? That will save you from walking. By the way, you can still, for the fun of it, you can still go to the illusory water thing, knowing it is a water. That's fine. That many practitioners do. Knowing it is an illusion, you can still go to it for the fun of it. But we don't. We don't know it's an illusion. We think it's real. Then we struggle. And then you reach there and to find it's just an illusion. Then you get more disappointed. You get more frustrated. Something like that.
I'm referring to the cycling life and the factors that make life unconscious, like action, reaction, cravings. In my experience, there are some actions that I feel coming from my inner space, a sort of inner need, and that make me feel that these kind of actions are part of an aware life. Can you try to elaborate on that, because maybe there are actions and actions, or this is not very clear to me.
I am very sure, many times we act consciously. We act consciously. We act with awareness. We act with mindfulness. So many times. I mean, probably not 100%, but, quite a good amount of awareness and consciousness and mindfulness. And that's the time that human nature, what the Buddhists call basic goodness of human being, love, compassion, all this actually sort of surfaces. But the moment we get entangled with hope and fear, then we forget that. Then the basic goodness of human being somehow gets lost in the, this muddy hope and fear and all kinds of defilements. I want to point this out. There's a common misunderstanding that people think that the practice of Buddhism is to do good things. Doing good is the ultimate practice. Good karma, let's call it. That's not necessarily true. Actually, to be free, of course, from the bad action, negative action, of course you don't want to do that. But even to be free from good action, because the Buddhists would say, it doesn't matter how you are being bound. You can be bound by an iron chain or a golden chain. As long as you are bound, you are still a prisoner. So even some so-called good action can bind you. I always quote this, and it's a great Indian master called Chandrakirti. He said, he was a scholar from Nalanda University. He said that an idiot will do bad things and go to hell. An idiot will do good things and go to heaven. Only wise will transcend good and bad and then be liberated. This is important for Buddhism, to be liberated from getting entangled. The whole point of this, what we call Sipakolo, this teaching, is actually to be liberated from the chain, this going round and round, cyclic existence. We will have just one or two more questions, and then actually to make it more, applicable, more, hands-on, so to speak, we will try to, I'll try to sort of relate this with some sort of a meditation or some sort of a exercise.
So my question is, these 12 links of dependent origination, it seems that the deepest layer of dependent origination comes from mere mental imputation. And if we in our day-to-day, the philosophy is very deep, and to really habituate the mind with this view of reality which tallies with reality, it seems like a very profound... but in our day-to-day life, how do we combat this? Okay. Yeah, I will keep that question. And that's exactly what we are going to try to demonstrate anyway.
My question is that, earlier you were discussing that if we have any distractions, so we shouldn't have distractions, and we want to live to the 100%.
Okay, I want to be careful here. When I say we should not have distractions, I don't want to make it sound very dogmatic. I think better you should phrase it like this. If you are distracted, you will get entangled. And who wants to be entangled? What do we mean by entanglement? Entanglement means you don't have a control. Who is not control freak here? Everybody wants to control. At the least, I want to control my own life. I want to actually be sober about my life. Okay, I want to also control you guys. Good. But I want to, most important is I have to control myself. And that controlling myself only happens when you are sober. Otherwise, I'm not claiming, I'm completely in control. Otherwise, you can bribe me by giving me some praise. Oh, I will fall for it. Or you can, criticize me. Even a small harsh words will do. I will throw my tantrums. I will always fall for that. So the reason why we fall for these things is because we are so habituated in getting entangled. And how do we not get entangled? Developing the mindfulness.
But then what are we supposed to do? Like you said that distractions are such as shoppings and entertainment basically. So
oh, okay. Well, there's a Buddhist sort of answer for this, which I'm hoping that we will discuss as we go through our, sort of more experiential, and I will try to relate to this one. Okay, I think we can start actually now. Is there one more question?
I had one question,
okay.
With your permission.
Yes, please.
You spoke of being and non-being in a sense. So I'm a little confused. My question is that are being and non-being manifestations of the same larger reality, if there is such a thing? And are there different types of selves? The wise self, or the higher self, a base self, a lower self, an immediate self, a deeper self? I don't know. So, just...
Well, strictly speaking, the Buddhists don't even assert, Buddhists don't believe in inherently existing self. Buddhists think it's a totally imputed labeling. It's actually just an idea. Now, we don't want to get in there because we are really talking about difficult subject. I mean, it's difficult just because of our habit. Actually, philosophically, it's not difficult. We would get into this.
And the idea of control, self-control.
Yeah.
So if there is no tangible self, what are we asserting control over?
Exactly. Actually not. Mm-hmm. But even though we don't have inherently existing self, the problem is, it's a bit like this. Okay. And this is, again, a classic Buddhist example. Let's say you are having a nightmare and you are having a terrible time stomping over by an elephant. The fact of the matter is there is no elephant. So what are you trying to get rid of? What are you trying to awake from? But that kind of philosophy doesn't really work when you are having the nightmare. When you are having the nightmare, elephant is really there. So even though the bucket of water to wake you up, the bucket of water is not going to shoo away the non-existent elephant, it does help. Point is, you have to wake up. I know the method is totally what do you call it? It's a trick. It's important that we know that the whole path is a trick. actually. So on this note, maybe we will try to cover this. Okay. Now, we talked about the definition, and I hope that we have at least some sort of a understanding of what is life. When I say life, samsara, from my point of view, from the Buddhist point of view. Now, many questions, very good questions are asked. So, what is it that the Buddhists are trying to achieve? What is the goal? The real goal is to understand the truth. Actually, that's it. This beautiful, there are names, beautiful names like nirvana, sometimes very deceiving because they are so poetic, the language. So you end up thinking there must be an exotic place called nirvana, but actually not true. Nirvana is understanding the truth. And when I say understanding the truth, I'm not talking about some exotic, supernatural truth. Not at all. I'm talking about very, very simple truth. It is so close to you, yet we don't know. For instance, forget other truths, but even certain truth, like all compounded things are impermanent, or in other words, we are all going to die. From the time we were born, we are dying. Big part of us is already dead. Yet, so intellectually, we may understand this. Technically, scientifically, you may understand this. But emotionally, we don't. We plan as if we are going to live forever. We shop as if we are going to live another 1,000 years. We make plans. Like even me, supposedly a follower of this path, I have made plans to go to some place April 2019, somewhere. And sort of, pledging people there, I'm going to turn up there. Just never really managing to accept. Who knows? I might die today, tonight. Even this blatant, obvious truth we cannot accept. Not philosophically. Philosophically and scientifically you can accept, but habitually we cannot accept. Aim is to understand the truth, but it's very difficult to understand even simple and blatant truth such as death and impermanence. Why is that? What makes you forget this truth? Buddhists think it is the distraction. You are distracted. And as I said early this morning, we are not talking about gross distractions such as web browsing or, we are talking about constant distractions. Constant. And that is what makes you get so entangled. And then you forget the truth. Okay? So, what do we do? So what can we do? Lot of things. And one very popular thing is something in Tibetan it's called gom. I think in Sanskrit it's dhyan, meditation, dhyan. Meditation is not really a good translation, but that's the word that we use right now. Gom, okay. But the moment we talk about meditation, we think in terms of sitting straight and some sort of a posture on a meditation cushion and closing eyes or sitting very in a quiet place at a designated area at a designated time. But actually, that's really not the case. Meditation is allowing yourself to have, it doesn't matter whether it is a momentary or whether it is few minutes or whether it's few hours, allowing yourself, disciplining yourself, habituating yourself in bringing yourself to this present. Okay? But the ritual, the discipline of sitting straight, cross-leg, sitting straight, closing eyes, hand gesture, all that could help. Chances of you being mindful, sitting straight is higher than lying in a hammock. You may fall asleep in the hammock. Chances of you developing mindfulness in a, dance floor, dancing with friends, especially for the beginners. Once you are good at it, then it doesn't matter. The posture is not important at all. But the bottom line is to bring yourself into the present. So this is something we can do even now. For instance, you are sitting here. And I'm not asking you to change your posture. Actually, try not to really sit straight. To be, however you are. You must be thinking of something. You must be feeling something. You must be hearing something. During the break, when you were having tea, did you look at the tea? Are you sure you looked at the tea? Probably not. Did you notice the tea? Probably not. Because you just have a general assumption that that is a tea. Then there's a general assumption that the tea kind of looks brown. We are quite distracted, so distracted that one will not be surprised if you ask for tea and someone give you cold water, you will actually not know. That much we are distracted. Okay. We are feeling the breeze. Okay? Now, I'm going to ask our friend here to play flute. And let's hear it, and don't like it, don't dislike it. Just know that you are hearing. Just be conscious. Don't get, hooked by, this is a very, very good one, so it'd be difficult. We heard, we have noticed, we are conscious. And then you are wearing things. Just be conscious of that. The hardness or the softness of the cushion. Just knowing that no judgment, no liking, no disliking, just simply being conscious of that. Okay? Now this time, let's do one with more ritual. So let's sit straight. But we are doing the same thing, okay? We are doing the same thing. We are sitting straight. And try not to get distracted. You must be hearing things, you must be feeling things, just be aware of that. Do not judge, do not paint, do not describe, do not define. just like a small child looking at a fresco. Okay, very good. So, when you sit like this, probably you may have heard camera clicking. Did you? And then immediately you have thought, that's a camera clicking. You thought about a camera unit, okay? That is this blind person. You have labeled camera clicking. And probably some of you are trying so hard to really meditate properly, and this cameraman came with clicking, and they say, what's this? Right? Noise bothered you. Please click more, okay, later. Noise bothered you. You know, you understand, you don't want to be disturbed. What's happening? The rest of this. Well, you are trying to meditate, and this camera clicking, and the sound of clicking, it bothered you. Action, nama, rupa, all the, and craving to properly meditate, craving to concentrate, all the way until the death of your mindfulness, which is symbolized by a dead body here. You understand? Or, not necessarily the death of the meditation. It could be also the death of wanting to meditate. So, the nidanas, 12 nidanas or 12 interdependent co-origination happens all the time. But moment you hear the camera clicking, and moment you are just hearing it and you are not judging, you are not valuing, you are not getting caught up by that, you are not entangled by the camera noise, you have killed this. No more ignorance. Just for a short time, of course. But, old habit will come back. So, you have eliminated this basically. If you eliminate this, this can't happen. The next one can't happen. You will not compose it. You will not compound. You are not a potter. If you do not compound, there will be no form. If there's no form, there's no names. If there's no names, so on and so forth, then there will be no hope and fear and craving and so on and so forth. If none of this exists, then there is no death or the extinction of what you have been wanting to or not wanting to have or not have. And this, what does this do? More and more and more of this means, discontinuation of this cyclic existence. And discontinuation of this cyclic existence is waking up from the dream. But I need to talk to you a little bit more from the inner one. So, but I want to do this again with a little bit of practice. So again, I don't want to emphasize on sitting. Please do what, be however you are. Scratch, yawn. I don't know, massage yourself. I don't know, do whatever you want to do, but try to be in the present. If you are annoyed, just be aware of that. If you are blissed out, just be aware of that. If you are a little bit agitated, be aware of that. If you're thinking about what to ask, just be aware of that. If you are hearing birds chirping, just be aware of that. Nothing exotic, nothing religious, nothing supernatural, nothing complicated. Okay, let's stop here for a few minutes. Okay, this time, again, let's do sitting straight. No moving, just completely sitting straight. And again, be aware of what's happening right this very moment. If you are thinking about Paris, just know that's what's happening. Suddenly, if you're thinking about Rome, you don't have to go back to Paris. Just be in Rome. You don't have to finish the story. And if you are not thinking anything, that's also fine. Just be aware of that. Just have awareness all the time. Okay, I'll try to explain the inner circle. So, when you are trying to be aware, the present moment. Maybe the first one moment, good, maybe you were aware. After a while, I'm sure you were distracted. And you are so distracted that you didn't even know you were distracted. Maybe mostly you were distracted in thinking, am I distracted? Am I doing it? Maybe I'm not. Maybe I am. No, I'm concentrating. That's what you may have done. Actually, just this is the side advice. If you think that you have not been distracted, chances of you being distracted is very high. If you are paranoid, I'm getting distracted, actually you are okay. Especially for the beginners, it's like a dawn of the wisdom, this paranoia. I'm going to get distracted. That's about all you can have for now, actually. But anyway, you get distracted. Then what happens? Then, according to this picture, generally speaking, out of this distraction, these so-called distractions become fatter, let's say. More grosser and fatter and more tangible. Okay? Very simple distractions, okay? You are trying to meditate or you are trying to be in the present. You hear a noise. Or you think about water or tea. And you get entangled. That entanglement leads to more entanglement. And this entanglement then becomes fat, big, gross, tangible. And then generally speaking, the Buddhists believe that this entanglement is categorized, anyway, the Buddhists categorize this into 5 or 6 different categories. And let's say you become aggressive. The entanglement leads to aggression. And this aggression, with the aggression you project to the world, you see unpleasant things. And that's called hell realm. I don't know where it is. I can't really see it properly. I think it's this, is it? Yeah. Hell. Yeah, I think it's this. That's the hell realm. It's actually a projection of your aggression. Buddhists don't believe in hell realm underneath somewhere. It could be happening like this evening when you lost your temper. Or this entanglement ends up becoming like a greed or stinginess. And that gets projected into what we call hungry ghost realm. Thank you. Hungry ghost realm. Yes. And then this entanglement also leads us to become become dull, very dull, and very dull, ignorant. And this is called projection of the animal realm. And then sometimes this entanglement sort of manifests as a jealousy. And this is the Asura realm. I think it's there. And then also the entanglement manifests as desire, which is a human realm. And then also the distractions end up becoming like a pride. It manifests as a pride, and it's a God realm. And I remember telling you, some of you, this in our last discussion. And don't think that these 6 realms exist outside. It can be manifesting throughout our day. you could wake up in the morning after a very busy night. You could wake up morning groggy, dull, not thinking straight, and you are experiencing animal realm. You are basically animal. And then after our grooming, moisturizer, aftershave, foundations, looking at the mirror, kind of happy with yourself, you are presentable, you are attractive, all that, you are in the God realm. And then you go to, I don't know, your work, and then you meet your colleague who you are jealous of, who's your big competitor, and envy, jealousy. You are going through the asura realm, so on and so forth. And then your boss, I don't know, scolds you for being late or something. And then you lose your temper, hell realm. So whole 6 realms can be happening within a day. So I think we talked a lot about the inner and the innermost circle last time, so I'm not going to speak too much about this too. Basically, I don't know whether you managed to, comprehend this a little bit, but basically all this is happening within these few moments or minutes of us getting distracted all the time, and then all of this is under the clutch, vicious clutch of this big monster, which is a representation of time. You are victim of time, meaning nothing is certain. Everything changes all the time. And time is the most vicious. So, what do you need to do to get out of that? Well, there's a symbol of the Buddha teaching here that you need to be free from getting caught up, getting entangled. When you are free from entanglement, you are free from time. You are free from space. And when you are free from time and space, you don't have any more the experience of 5 or 6 realms. Then that's what the Buddhists think liberation. Again, I have to point this out. It's not a state. It's not some sort of a place. It is a realization of the truth. I think we can somehow understand this with the analogy of watching a movie. You can watch a movie, you can get totally engaged with it in one sense. The love story, the suspense, the thrilling, whatever event, whatever. But inside you also know that this is just a movie. So you can especially if you are watching a video, you can always pause it to go to washroom and come back or rewind it. See, you have the guts to pause it. But this movie that's happening right now, we don't know how to pause it. We don't know how to rewind it. We don't know how to fast forward it. And we are so entangled. And we are totally, we are totally under the control of this delusion. So if you have some questions, I'm happy to answer after. I don't know. I hope this helped you understand
Rinpoche, I was just looking at this picture and I suddenly noticed that within each quadrant in the corner there is a celestial being up on a cloud.
There's a what?
A celestial being like a Buddha.
Oh yeah. Yes.
What is the significance of that?
And oh my goodness. Okay.
Second question I have is that every field of human endeavor requires, in fact, one's own livelihood. It requires some degree of hope and fear and some projection. Like if you're a teacher, then you're hoping that the students would understand. If you're a designer, you're hoping that whatever you create is beautiful.
Yes.
And you're constantly making fine judgments about this. Is it possible to engage in this samsaric activity without getting entangled and caught up?
Yes. Okay. First, the 6 Buddhas, this I've noticed that this tanka or the painting actually comes from a certain school of Buddhism in Tibet. But anyway, the 6 Buddhas representing that actually no matter who you are or what kind of beings you are, animal, asura, God, human, you have the Buddha nature in you. And that is actually the antidote, the real antidote. Okay, it's a little difficult to probably. For instance, okay, if this is a little dirty, fact that it can be clean is because the dirt is temporary. That is the ultimate antidote. Because when we talk about antidote, we always feel that antidote has to come from outside. The Buddhists always emphasize, never. Antidote is you. Real, sort of your basic nature is the antidote. You have to really use that. Don't bank on the outer antidote. Outer antidote actually, lingers your path. It can actually entangle you. So to really teach this comes from a very, very extensive teaching called Bardo, the intermediate state, which is taught, especially in the Nyingma tradition, by a great teacher called Karma Lingpa. And in his teaching, very extensive teachings about all of this. Well, as for your second question, I think I've already said, just as how a mother play with the children, you can certainly develop the awareness and have the compassion to play with the world. Also, it's important if you are learning this, like if you are learning to ride bicycle, it's important to not only learn in your living room. You should kind of go outside and face the rough road. There you will learn more. So I think dwelling in your world, being a father, mother, normal job, all that could actually also stimulate or sharpen your wisdom. But of course, you are playing very dangerous game here. But it's always going to be like this. Working with a habit is always difficult. But it is doable. At the same time, the good news is habit is not your true nature. So it is removable. That is always the good news. That one you have to bank on. That. Because many times we think this is your nature, but it's not true. It's your habit. It's a temporary. It's a removable.
Rinpoche, I also noticed that depending on which quadrant you are, realm you are, the appearance of the Buddha also changes. Like in the human realm, he's
Yes.
holding a begging bowl.
Yes.
And in the Deva realm, he is holding a musical instrument. Does
Yes.
this have any significance?
Oh yes. Okay. You're very good. In the God realm, in the Deva realm, Buddha is playing some sort of a lute, right? Yes. Okay. Deva realm has distractions. And what is their distractions? Pleasure. Pleasure. You know, music, I think harp, and swimming pool, swans, I don't know, the Deva realm descriptions, all these pleasure objects. And they get so distracted to this. To teach the Deva, you need to, it's always like this. The path is very tricky. A path has to look alike the habit that it is countering with. You understand? Many times, actually, if the path is very skillful and if the path is good, it really should look like the problem that you are trying to counter. Then it's a really good path. So it's almost like using pleasurable object to defeat the pleasurable objects. This sixth Buddha is a tantric teaching, by the way, and that's why this symbolism are quite sophisticated. In fact, I think it is the I think in the Asura realm, the Buddha is holding armor and a sword. Yes. Again, using the emotion as the path. Okay.
Rinpoche, this point of using emotions, could you elaborate on that a little bit? Using emotions as the path?
Okay. In the Vimalakirti Sutra, Buddha said, lotus will not grow in a clean water or a clean surface. Lotus only grows from a muddy, dirty water. Likewise, Buddhahood, the Buddha cannot be found in a clean place. Buddha is only found where there is dirt, which is emotion. This is a very big Mahayana teachings. And it may be a little bit confusing also for people. How should I put it? If you lost your cow, and if you need to search for the cow, you need to look at the footprints of the cow. And following the footprints, you will find the cow. And according to Tantric Buddhism, it says that the emotions are like the footprints of the wisdom. When the emotions are out of your control without mindfulness, then emotions entrap you, enslave you, and control you. But the moment you have the awareness, moment you have the mindfulness, it is actually these emotions that are like a footprint which will actually lead you to the wisdom. Because after all, where is light if there is no darkness? Where is shadow? Where is light if there is no shadow? if you want to sort of know what is light, you need to have a shadow. Of course, we are talking about Tantric Buddhism here a little bit, quite strongly, and this is again a kind of how should I call it? Okay. The reason is this. The emotions, if you look at an emotion, let's say jealousy, when you are jealous, what are you experiencing? You are experiencing, of course, among the pain and all that, ignorance and delusion and all of that, but the big chunk of jealousy is also acute awareness. There's a cognition. There's a real, how should I put it? There's that, what do you call it? Consciousness. You are very much there. When we are jealous, if you are really, really jealous with somebody, you can try to distract yourself with a web browsing or having a nice tea, but it will still go back so strongly. It is so strongly there. So instead of trying to get escape from that, taking advantage of that vibrant, present force of this, what do you call it? The jealousy is a consciousness, isn't it? It's being conscious. Yes, it's very much mingled with, ignorance, but nevertheless, it is very sharp, and that need to be utilized. Again, this is a little bit influenced by what I'm just telling you, is a little bit influenced by the Tantric Buddhism. But also in the Mahayana Buddhism, they talk about that. For instance, if you don't have an emotion at all, what are you trying to achieve then? You already achieved. If you are not dreaming, if you are not sleeping, what are you waking up from? We are assuming that we are dreaming, we are having a nightmare, and then you can talk about a path to awake from, isn't it? So, and if you are having a mediocre dream that is sort of, like not cohesive, not well scripted sort of dream, very hard to wake up from that. Not even a wish to wake up. But if you have a nightmare of like spider crawling over you, you really want to get out of that. So that need to be taken advantage. One must take advantage of that. Okay?
Respected Rinpoche, I think one understands the value and the importance of making the present and the now your friend, the value of making it your friend. And just like if you show anger, you don't have to be angry. My question is, can you not live life in two planes? One, the emotional, spiritual part, which is in the now and the present, without any suffering from the past or expectations from the future. And at the same time, in your physical state, reflect on the past, its teachings, lessons, and be prepared for the future. So, can you not live life at two levels?
Very much so. Actually, the Buddhist term, you were talking about like plane?
Life, whatever.
Right.
Plane, yes.
Yeah, Buddhist talk, especially my teacher, one of my meditation instructor, he says, you should have two set of eyes on your neck. One that is watching, the watcher, two eyes. This is the eyes that we use to watch. But you should also have two eyes watching this watcher, watching the watcher, so to speak. And I think this is the similar here, very much so. And if you do that, this is what the Buddhists call upaya, skillful means. So you know, then I think life becomes so humorous, and also you then, this is where the great Mahasiddhas of the past, they play all sorts of games to really benefit others. They stage how miserable they are. They stage how they are so jealous. They staged, how they are doomed. They are staged how they are ignorant, so on and so forth. Because you also have to, well, especially in the Mahayana Buddhism, big part is to really help others, to benefit others. And for that, definitely having that, awareness, having that watching the watcher, it's very important, right?
Thank you.
Rinpoche, it's now 1 o'clock. Would you like to continue? Would anybody like to ask more questions?
I'm running out of things to say.
Just a quick question. Rinpoche, how will we distinguish between making some progress, being able to follow the footprints of your emotions, and maybe perhaps, hopefully, being able to, be aware and apply whatever Rinpoche was teaching today? How can we distinguish that from from becoming dull?
Little difficult. It's a little difficult, but there's advice. Okay, you're playing with a fire, and since you decided to play with the fire, in the beginning you should play with the fire short time, but many times. Especially in the beginning. If you play with a fire long time, it might burn your hand. You understand? So you are playing with the emotion. So before the emotion grabs you and controls you, you should, hide, escape. And don't escape too long. Don't hide too long. Quickly come back and play with the emotion. Fundamentally it's like this. I want to say this before I... Buddhadharma is like a sharpening knife. When you sharpen knife, what do you do? What do you have? You have a, whetstone and the knife. And you rub. What happens? The stone burns out and the metal burns out. Burning off stone and the metal is called sharp knife. Likewise, you have emotions, defilements, and then you have wisdom. Both has to burn out. Never you should think emotions, get rid of, and then we take the wisdom as a souvenir. Because it's useless to have a wisdom when you have no emotion. So, at the end, Buddhism has to be burned off. Buddhism has to be abandoned. This is, Maitreya said this. If you go to the other shore, you take a boat. Once you reach the other shore, if you're still standing in the boat, sitting in the boat, because you're so in love with Buddhism, the boat, because it's so beautiful, all of that, you are not on the other shore. You have to get rid of the boat. Then you reach to the other shore. But meanwhile, the way to play with the emotion, there's many, many ways. That's why there's actually what we call three vehicles, many yanas, yana vehicles. There's a Sharvaka yana, there's a Pratyeka Buddha yana, there's a Mahayana, there's a Vajrayana, all sorts of yanas. And they all have a different approach. And somehow this morning we ended up talking more on the Mahayana and the Vajrayana. But in the Sharvakayana, there is a method of actually imposing quite a lot of restrictions towards oneself to not to get distracted. So therefore, the discipline of vipassana, as I said this morning, sitting straight and meditating, probably for the beginners, better than lying down or dancing or, shopping. But, okay, so in the beginning, maybe cushion, sit straight, like that. But after a while, you actually should stop and meditate. Because if you are only good at meditating on the cushion in a quiet place, in a designated area and a time, and when the situation arises, you can't fetch the cushion and no time. You'll be bombarded with all kinds of circumstances. You have no time to go and sit there. So you have to utilize the awareness there and then as the situation arises. So for that kind of thing, slowly you expose yourself more to the dangerous terrain and areas within your capacity. Once you are really good at it, then by all means play along, roll over emotions again and again and again until the time happens when there is no difference between emotion and the wisdom. Then there is no hope, no fear, nothing. You are free.